Really, this slide here is just, about personal staff. They all have staff because they're busy and they got a lot of correspondence to deal with when it comes to constituents, contacting them, reading through bills, committee meetings. They become pretty busy. Okay. And so the staffs are something they really rely on. You guys had time to write that down the other day. Okay. So this is like personal staff. Okay. Then you have what are called committee staff. All right. Now these positions aren't really political in nature. They're really more focused on the business of legislation. Okay. So this is like a career you could have. Like you could become an expert. I think this is dead. I'm pressing the wrong one. Now the battery works. Okay. So so you have people that are experts that work for the committee. So somebody with a degree in horticulture, okay, or experience in farming could serve on the agriculture committee staff and be an expert to explain things to members of Congress that they may not know. There's an education committee in both houses. I'm a person that 23 years of education, I might be able to go to work and work on that committee as an advisor to the members that are on that committee. Okay. So if you're into Washington, D.C., you want to live in the swamp and, be part of it, I'm sure they have openings. Okay. This is a more specialized staffer. Okay. Now, there are some agencies that help Congress do their work as well, to carry out their work. And I've listed those here. Okay. Obviously, there's the Library of Congress. Have any of you guys been in there, the Library of Congress? Okay. I've got some pictures on the next slide of it. It's a pretty amazing facility. I know we don't do libraries very much anymore because of the internet. Okay. But there's a vast amount of knowledge in libraries that you can't find on the internet. And these things we call books that are not on the internet. Okay. So those are good. And then the Congressional Budget Office. So when they start looking at this infrastructure bill we keep talking about, okay, the CBO is going to give the members of Congress, they say, this is what we want to do. And then the CBO is going to tell you how much that's going to cost. And they're going to look at ways to pay for it. How are we going to pay for this within the current budget restraints that we have? Okay, and obviously the answer, as usual, is we're not. We're just going to add it to the national debt. That's the most recent response. Okay. Then you have the General Accounting Office. Okay, and this was created back in the 1920s under Harding administration, and it watches over spending. So when the government spends money, there's laws they have to follow. Okay. So the General Accounting Office makes sure that they do spend the money legally, hopefully in the most efficient way. Okay, so the GAO is kind of an important body. They're based out of Chicago, the GAO. I had a neighbor that went to Wichita State and studied international business, and now works for the GAO in Chicago. Okay. You got the Government Printing Office, which is in West Virginia. Okay. I don't know if you remember the guy, one of the old guys I showed you, not Strom Thurmond, but Harry Byrd. He was from West Virginia, and he got the GPO built in West Virginia, which created a lot of jobs for the people that live in Parkersburg, West Virginia, where the Government Printing Office is. Okay. So this is just what helps Congress function. Okay, personal staffs, committee staffs, and then these different congressional agencies. So Congress is more than, you know, what the legislative branch is a little bit more than just the 535 members. Okay, they do have some of this that helps them. Okay. Now, I would say that these two are, you would find generally, they're part of the executive branch. This is part of the legislative branch. All right. Here's some pictures of the Library of Congress. This is kind of a good map of it, showing the different rooms. Jefferson Congressional Reading Room, Asian Reading Room, American Folklore, or Folk Life Center, I guess they call it. Porch of Learning, the Northeastern Pavilion, Main Reading Room. I think if you saw the movie National Treasure, Book of Secrets, special book hidden in the Library of Congress. Okay, here it is, guys. Here's your essay. We're going to watch this at the beginning. We're going to watch this at the end.
Your body grows bigger, your mind must power. It's great to learn, cause knowledge is power. Be slow now, strong, put your on the block. On your fingerprints, school, I'm just a bill.
Whew, you sure gotta climb a lot of steps to get to this Capitol building here in Washington. But I wonder who that sad little scrap of paper is.
I'm just a bill. Yes, I'm only a bill. And I'm sitting here on Capitol Hill. Well, it's a long, long journey to the capital city. It's a long, long wait while I'm sitting in committee. But I know I'll be a law someday. At least I hope and pray that I will. But today I am still just a bill.
Gee, Bill, you certainly have a lot of patience and courage.
Well, I got this far. When I started, I wasn't even a bill. I was just an idea. Some folks back home decided they wanted a law passed, so they called their local congressman, and he said, "You're right, there ought to be a law." And he sat down and wrote me out and introduced me to Congress, and I became a bill. And I'll remain a bill until they decide to make me a law. I'm just a bill. Yes, I'm only a bill. And I got as far as Capitol Hill. Well, now I'm stuck in committee, and I'll sit here and wait while a few key congressmen discuss and debate whether they should let me be a law. I hope and pray that they will. But today I am still just a bill.
Listen to those congressmen arguing. Is all that discussion and debate about you?
Yeah, I'm one of the lucky ones. Most bills never even get this far. I hope they decide to report on me favorably, otherwise I may die.
Die?
Yeah, die in committee. Oh, but it looks like I'm going to live. Now I go to the House of Representatives and they vote on me.
If they vote yes, what happens?
Then I go to the Senate and the whole thing starts all over again.
Oh, no.
Oh, yes. I'm just a bill. Yes, I'm only a bill. And if they vote for me on Capitol Hill, well, then I'm off to the White House where I'll wait in line with a lot of other bills for the president to sign. And if he signs me, then I'll be a law. hope and pray that he will, but today I am still just a bill.
You mean even if the whole Congress says you should be a law, the president can still say no?
Yes, that's called a veto. If the president vetoes me, I have to go back to Congress and they vote on me again, and by that time you're so
By
old.
that time, it's very unlikely that you become a law. It's not easy to become a law, is it?
No, but how I hope and pray that I will, but today I am still just a bill. He signed your bill, now you're a law. Oh, yeah.
Imagine most of you guys have you seen that before? Some of you haven't seen it before. Okay. All right. Well, it's kind of a decent little summary of how a bill becomes a law. Okay. What we're going to do is going to be a little more detailed than that. Okay. But not too detailed. All right. The process can be complicated. There are, like I said, I think I said this the other day, there's over 600 pages of rules, operating rules for the House and the Senate. Okay. Those 600 pages have grown over 230 years. Okay. So it really pays dividends to know all the rules. Okay. So, Speaker Pelosi, her staff, Chuck Schumer and the Senate, they need to know the rules. Okay. And they're going to try and use the rules to their benefit to get legislation passed. Okay. And so those are some of the things we'll be talking about. But generally, we'll start with referral to a committee. So a bill is introduced. A member of Congress introduces a bill. The Speaker in the House, and the Majority Leader in the Senate will send this to one of the committees in Congress. Okay. Inside the committee, they'll have hearings, markup. Okay. Then they'll write a report or a summary of the bill, and then it will go to the floor, to the 435 in the House, to the 100 in the Senate. It goes to the floor, okay? And then what happens on the floor is there's a lot that can happen, and both chambers are very different on this one. And then conference committee, which we talked about yesterday, we have version 1, version 2, and then you've got to reconcile the differences or compromise in conference committee. Okay, so that's a very important step as well. And then if it passes both houses, it goes to the president. And the president actually has 4 options, not just 1 option or 2 options. We know he can veto it, right? We know he can sign it, but there's actually 2 other options he has. Okay, so we'll talk about those. So on your essay, guys, you're going to be writing an 8-paragraph essay. Okay, now if you want to combine some paragraphs, I don't care. Okay, just as long as you have all the information, I think it's easier just to break it down with 8 paragraphs, and you'll have an intro and a conclusion, and you'll be done. Okay, so some of your paragraphs, like your last essay, will be longer than others. Okay, and it's not really difficult. It's not tough. All right, so I'm going to go through this slowly and explain it all to you, okay? And now you'll have a better understanding how a bill becomes a law, okay? So we'll start with referral to committee. This is actually, this photograph here, this is John Boehner. I brought him up the other day, where he's the guy that got rid of Tim Huelskamp. He kicked him off the Ag Committee. That's John Boehner. And he's handing the gavel, the House gavel, to Nancy Pelosi the first time she was Speaker of the House, okay? Because the Democrats lost control of the House eventually, and then they won it back, okay? So Nancy was the first ever female Speaker of the House, okay, and the second female Speaker of the House as well, okay. All right, so in most cases, bills that are introduced are referred, okay. They're sent to a committee. And I think we should just stay on this idea of the infrastructure bill, okay. We've been talking about it, so let's just stay on that. And we talked about the different committees in the House and the Senate that this would be sent to. Now, this bill is going to spend money, lots of money, infrastructure, okay? So it's got to start where? In the House of Representatives, good, yes, okay? So the presiding officer here, guys, is generally the Senate Majority Leader. That makes the referral. Okay, now let me tell you something. If Nancy Pelosi doesn't like the bill, the Speaker of the House, she doesn't like the bill, she can send it to any committee she wants to. You understand? She doesn't have to send it to the Committee on Infrastructure. She can send it to a committee where she knows the chairperson of that committee doesn't like the bill either. And the committee chair will never put it on the calendar. And that bill will die. What do we call that? Does anybody remember what we call that? Starts with a P. It's a bird. Pigeonhole. Okay? So really, Nancy has control over every piece of legislation because she knows those committee chairs. And if she doesn't like it, she's going to say, hey, Bob, I'm sending this over. You won't like it. I don't like it. Pigeonhole it. It's over. Okay? There's Robert Byrd, former Klansman guy. So, this is a powerful tool. Powerful tool, okay? Which committee is chosen affects the life of that bill. Okay, so if there's a bill on, say, pesticides, remember, I don't know, did I talk about the pine beetle in here? You guys know about the pine beetle in Colorado? Have you guys been out to Colorado? Okay, the pine beetle is destroying large swaths of pine trees. Okay, so if you go to Colorado, you can still see this. So you see all these green pine trees in the mountains, and then you'll see a big area that's dead. This pine beetle, which is, I think, gone now, was a problem, okay, because dead trees really help forest fires. You know what I mean? And they've had some bad ones in Colorado, recently. And so one idea was to spray the trees to kill this bug. But the pesticide itself could get into the ground, into the drinking water, the groundwater and stuff like that. So if there was a bill on pesticides and Pelosi didn't like it, she could send it to like an environmental committee instead of an agriculture committee, where it would be dead on arrival. It would be pigeonhole. Does that make sense? So in reality, guys, this is what I'm talking about. When I say the Speaker of the House, the Senate Majority Leader are like dictators over their respective houses. This is why. They control what committee you sit on as a member. They control what committee legislation is referred to. So, like I said, nothing happens in the House of Representatives unless Nancy Pelosi wants it to happen. Okay? Does that seem fair? Probably not, but that's the way it is. Okay? So why sugarcoat it? It's like a dictator. Okay? Well, that was fast. That's a short paragraph. Okay? Right? Yeah, you can handle that. All right, hearings are the second step. So the bill is now in committee. So the committees will hold hearings. Now, hearings can be held at the subcommittee level or the full committee level. Oftentimes they'll be sent to the subcommittee first, which is more specialized. So on this infrastructure bill, you may have a couple different subcommittees that this bill is sent to study it. Okay? These are generally open to the public. Okay? And I don't know if you guys have been on you guys know what CSPAN is? Talked about CSPAN? There's so many channels on TV now. So you can't even really surf through them all. I mean, it's just like you've got your channels you go to and stuff like that. There's C-SPAN and C-SPAN 2. Okay. Now on C-SPAN 1, House session. I don't really have to log in with my television provider. Let's look up here. In 2004. This is an Armed Services Committee hearing.
Homeowners, this incredible tip is just for you. If you owe less than $331,760.
Get that. No, I'm skipping that.
History TV every weekend on C-SPAN 3.
Oh, there's C-SPAN 3
Next,
now.
testimony on the conflict between Russia and Ukraine, cybersecurity threats, and the Biden administration decision to increase troop levels in Germany. Army and Air Force generals testify. Rhode Island Senator Jack Reed chairs the hearing.
Duration capabilities and how important is the F-35 to deter these threats in Europe?
Senator, the F-35 is very important. As I mentioned in my opening comments, our disposition from a military perspective is strong yet challenged. And part of that challenge is the evolution of the Su-37 fifth generation aircraft on behalf of the Russians. And we in the U.S. need F-35s in Europe, which will begin to show up in the fall of 21 to ensure that we have the competitive advantage necessary to protect our sovereign territory.
Okay. That's what a committee hearing room looks like. Okay. Now they're talking about, foreign policy. And I don't know if you guys are staying up on this, guys. Russia has been moving troops into Crimea. Let me show you this. Get this thing over here. I mean, this is like kind of important. Okay. So back in 2008, okay, this is the Black Sea here. A little bit better, okay? But you got the Black Sea here. This peninsula and the Black Sea down here is called Crimea. Now, Crimea is part of Ukraine here in green, okay? And right now, so in 2008, the Russians sent troops into Crimea and took it back. Russia does not have a warm water port in the wintertime, okay? So this region of the Black Sea and down through here, Istanbul, is their only path to get commerce in and out of Russia during the wintertime because all of this up here freezes. So this is of great importance. When they sent troops into Crimea in 2008, Obama did nothing. Okay, now, Ukraine is not part of NATO. They're not part of our military alliance. But if Russia invades Ukraine, Eastern Europe is threatened. Eastern Europe are our allies. They're part of NATO. Okay, and right now, Russia is massing more troops in Crimea than we've seen in years. Okay, we're talking about 100,000 troops, tanks, artillery, and so forth. Okay, and so that's why they're having these hearings. China is starting to get pretty focused on Taiwan. I don't know if your teacher taught you about this in history. Guys, when China fell to communism, the leader of China, Chiang Kai-shek, fled to this island. Okay? And him and his wife eventually democratized Taiwan. It became a democracy, a republic. And China claims that Taiwan is part of China. It has always been until 1948. Okay, they broke away. They want it back. Simultaneously, if the Chinese and the Russians work together and attack here and here at the same time, are we ready for that? That's exactly what they're talking about in this meeting right here. So these hearings are pretty important. You know what I mean? And this is something we should all be paying attention to. All right, will we stand with the Ukrainian people and the Taiwanese people, or will we let these two countries invade? Now, there's a lot to this, guys. This is why history is important, okay? Because if you look at the Ukraine, which calls itself independent of Russia, the history of Russia, if you go way back in Russian history, Russia was formed in Kiev, which is in modern-day Ukraine. There's a lot of Russian-speaking people in the Ukraine that want to be part of the motherland again. So it's a very complicated situation in Ukraine, and it is very complicated in Taiwan. Okay? This is government, right? You remember at the beginning of this, we went through this, protecting Taiwan from China. I think it was one of the 23 things we went over. Okay? And we have said that we would defend Taiwan for the last 50, 60 years. Will we? Should we? Okay. All right. Sorry, I got off track there. Okay, let's get back on how a bill becomes a law. All right. So this is what a committee hearing room looks like. Okay, we just saw this. All right. And obviously you had some experts there testifying in front of members of the Senate. Okay. On this infrastructure bill, you're going to bring in people, okay, maybe government officials, maybe construction experts on, aging bridges, stuff like that, okay? And they're going to testify, and these members of Congress will sit here and they will ask questions, okay? Now, the chair of the committee, okay, is there, all right? And then here is tables and your witnesses. Does that make sense? Now, all types of people will come to testify. Members do not have to attend this. So if it's not a really important hearing for some of them, the room will generally look like this. You know what I mean? They don't have to show up. Okay? So this is why sometimes they will bring in somebody of celebrity status or somebody that's a very important person to come in to testify, to draw attention to the bill. Okay? So you're going to have people on both sides. The Republicans are going to bring in witnesses. The Democrats are going to bring in witnesses, supporters and opponents of this legislation. Okay? Who else? Public officials. We saw some generals there today. Interest groups, ordinary citizens testify, and celebrities are often used to draw attention. You guys all know who Stephen Colbert is? Okay, he's got a late night talk show. Okay, here's some famous people testifying in front of Congress in a hearing. Okay, I know you may not know all these people. I think everybody knows who this is. It's Bill Gates, okay? The owner of Microsoft, okay? This is John Kerry, and he's actually testifying about his time in Vietnam. This is Richard Gere. He's an actor, famous actor. He's a big activist as well. He has his causes. You guys know George Clooney, right? He's testified before Congress. He's got his little causes, okay? This is actually the drummer of Metallica. You've heard of Metallica? Lubers? Blake? No? When the internet came out, there's some college students like Bill Gates when he was a college student, or Mark Zuckerberg when he was a college student, that figured out how to upload music and share it with other people for free. And they developed a website called Napster. Now, if you're a musician and you produce music, that music is copyrighted. You get a copyright on it, okay? Which means people cannot sell it without owning it, okay? And so a bunch of musicians were like, hey, this website is stealing our music. And so the drummer from Metallica shows up to testify in front of Congress. Now, those of you that don't know Metallica, they are a heavy metal rock and roll band, okay? And so when a heavy metal rock and roll band guy comes to testify in front of Congress, guess who shows up to cover it? The media. So what you'll get here, I gotta show you a clip. Any guys ever heard of Twisted Sister? It's a rock and roll band, okay? Let's see if I can find these. Dean Schneider's the lead singer. Oh, this is great. How long? I need a short clip.
It's beautiful. Don't play your
Some here.
Okay, so this is back when Bill Clinton was president and Al Gore was vice president. Tipper Gore, okay, Senate hearing on parent music because the music lyrics and some of the stuff that was coming out, they were worried. They wanted like censor musicians. And so Dee Schneider is going to testify in front of Congress. And this is
In the 1980s, Dee Snider of Twisted Sister was the most dangerous guy on the planet. This was when metal met its first organized attack. Twisted Sister and 8 other metal bands were placed on a list called the Filthy 15 because their music was deemed offensive by the Parents Music Resource Center. Dee Snider was summoned to testify before the U.S. Congress to defend his music and his livelihood.
'94 was a pretty insane time for Twisted Sister. We were hearing bits and pieces about this Parents Music Resource Center and Tipper Gore, but not really registering because we were getting protests and religious groups at every show. So just another parent group that, was putting Twisted Sister on a list of targets.
We have always talked about the positive aspects of the music industry.
underneath, and my big hair. And I ain't getting dressed up for nobody. I'm a dirtbag and I'm proud. And I play these people like, mentally I'm setting these guys up for the kill. I have got my speech in my back pocket, which I have worked on for a few weeks and honed and refined till it's a freaking nuclear weapon. Folded up like a gazillion times, like a bad kid bringing his homework to school. I open it up and I'm flattening it out on the table, really deliberate. And they're going, oh man, this is a lamb being brought to the slaughter. And I start reading.
Since I seem to be the only person addressing this committee today who has been a direct target of accusations from the presumably responsible PMRC, I would like to use this occasion to speak on a more personal note and show just how unfair the whole concept of lyrical interpretation and judgment can be, and how many times this can amount to little more than character assassination.
See the camera
And I am just tearing apart everything that they've accused me of, disproving without a shadow of a doubt that everything they've accused me of is wrong, false, and they are scrambling. They were saying that Under the Blade was about sadomasochism and bondage. It was about my guitar player's throat operation.
It's not really a wild leap of the imagination to jump to the conclusion that that's about something other than surgery or hospitals, neither of which are mentioned in the song.
No, it's not a wild jump, and I think what I said in one part was that songs allow a person to put their own imagination, experiences, and dreams into the lyrics. People can interpret it many ways. Ms. Gore was looking for sadomasochism and bondage, and she found it. Someone looking for surgical references would have found it as well.
Yeah.
I said, I can't help that Tipper Gore's got a dirty mind, and Al Gore just, oh my God, he really jumped over the table. They were saying, we're not going to take it. We should be on the filthy 15 for violence, and it was no more violent than the Declaration of Independence.
The PMRC rated songs according to violence, the occult, sex, drugs, and alcohol. And although Dee Snider talked about throat operations and standing up for your rights, most metal songs deal with much more provocative themes. Themes like hedonism, religion, death, and sexuality.
So, look, that got a lot of attention, guys. So celebrities are often used. It's a very common tool by members of Congress to get attention to their bill, okay? Now, when you talk about individuals, like just ordinary citizens coming and testifying in these hearings over different pieces of legislation, I want to give you another example real quick, okay? And have any of you guys heard of Megan's Law? Okay, you probably might know what it is without knowing the name. Megan was a young girl, and she became the victim of a sexual predator, okay? And what happened was this guy had been convicted of a sex crime. He went to jail, did his time, got out of jail, and then moved into Megan's neighborhood. Now, Megan and her parents didn't know who this guy was that moved into their neighborhood. If they would have known who he was, then they probably would have protected their daughter more and not let her out to play in the neighborhood with this sexual predator in it. But they didn't know. And Megan became his next victim. And so after he was convicted again, Megan's mother went to her member of Congress and said there needs to be a law that when these sexual predators get out of jail, people need to know that they're living near them and their children. And so she testified in front of Congress. Her congressman proposed this law. She testified, and when she was done testifying, there was nearly a dry eye in the room. And this became law. So you may have heard of this, guys. There is a sexual registry, a sexual predator registry. You can get an app on your phone, or you can just do a Google search and find out where people that have been convicted of sex crimes live near you. And what you're going to find, guys, is shocking when you look at that. Have any of you guys, have you heard of this? Okay. They're all around Wichita. You understand? Now, you guys know what a halfway house is? This is where when people get out of jail, oftentimes they'll move into a group home. It's like a halfway house between, prison and getting back into society. Now, these are important places. Okay, we give second chances to people in this country. Okay, and people do change. They do reform. But guys, recidivism rates of sexual predators are extremely high. The likelihood of somebody that commits rape against somebody committing rape again is extremely high, especially predators of children. Recidivism rates are crazy high. In fact, the Attorney General of the state of Kansas, Carla Stovall, about 20 years ago, argued for a law in the state of Kansas, and it got challenged in the Supreme Court, and she won that case that says if somebody has served their time for a crime against a child, a sexual crime against a child, even though they've gotten out of prison, if we deem they are still a threat to the community, you can have them institutionalized in a mental hospital for as long as you think they're a threat. Okay, so that's like the reason why that had to go to the Supreme Court, guys, is because they've done their time. You can't continue to punish somebody once they've done their time. But if you think they're sick, which they are, you institutionalize them. Okay, so as ugly as we see sometimes Congress as being and some of the things they do, there is a path for justice. There is a path for righteousness in this system. It's just got to be used correctly. Okay, so these hearings can be important. A lot of time, nobody really pays attention to them. Okay, but there are times where these hearings are very important. Okay, so that's all you have to really have for the second step. All right, is what transpires here, and you guys can do. There's all sorts of examples. But when the media shows up with the cameras, guys, so do the members of the committee. It's a packed house. Okay, because all these people want to get their face on TV, asking tough questions and looking like they're doing their job well. You understand? Okay, and that's why you bring the media in, and it exposes the importance of the bill. Good? All right, we'll stop there for today, and we'll move on to markup tomorrow.